for the younger generation, that is the way to go in terms of communication. And we as an organization need to build upon that. And I know our J6 folks just shudder when I throw out these ideas. But the fact is, that's what we got to do, because communication is critical. And somehow we have to break the code on how we ensure that every soldier and airman knows what's happening. I mentioned earlier that we're in the process of updating our strategic plan, and strengthening our communications is going to be one of the the objectives in that new plan. And that plan, by the way, our goal, our target right now is to have that completed by September, so that as we start the new training year, we get it out into the hands of everyone. And I'm sure many of you recall 2 years ago we literally sent it to every single one of the homes of every single one of our soldiers and airmen. And the intent in doing that was to make sure it not only got your attention, but hopefully your family members saw it too, and got an idea of where we're going as a North Dakota National Guard. The other thing is I don't know how many of you, I hope many of you have been given some of these little handy-dandy talking point cards. Murph, have we got these out to every soldier and airman? Oh, okay. Well, I asked Captain Murphy because it's their shop that puts it together. But these are, if you haven't seen them, and I know they're online, but every 3 months we put out a North Dakota National Guard talking point card, a little quad fold. These are some of the issues, the messages, the things that are pertinent as we speak, and we want to make sure, in the current one for it, we talked a little bit about flood preparation operations, winter ops. We're still in winter ops, believe it or not. Legislative session, service member family support, recruiting and retention, and then just this week we put out a new card specifically for flood operations, 2011 flood talking points, and in it, we have the messages that we want the people of North Dakota to know and understand about our capability to protect their property, protect their lives. And I'm not sure how we do it, but somehow it's vital that we get these out to people so that they know where we're at right now, and in this case in terms of flood ops, flood preparations, and what the public, what the people need to hear. And I say what they need to hear because we need to get our message out to everyone so that they continue to understand what we're going to be doing in the course of the next several months. Another 2 items under communicating with the force. Years ago, we used to, on the Army side, and I think it's true on the Air side, every year we'd try to do a command climate survey. And somewhere in the last couple of years that fell by the wayside. And what we're in the process of doing right now is trying to develop a command climate survey that we can use across the force, both on the Army and the Air side. And we've just become aware of a program, a defense survey program that focuses initially on the equal opportunity part of our organization, but allows us to inject other questions that help me know and understand what the command climate is in the units across the state. It'll be an electronic survey, and your response is anonymous, but it will give invaluable information to the commander as well as senior leadership in terms of what some of the issues and challenges are for us within the force. And that acronym you see up there, or it was up there a minute ago, it's DE, what is it? DEOCS. It stands for Defense Equal Opportunity Organizational Climate Survey. So I'm hopeful that within the next couple of months, if not sooner, we'll start to get that out. And I encourage you, and for you to encourage others to take advantage of the survey, respond to it, and that will allow us to gather further information. TAC card access is a question that has come up. I've been told that on the Army side, every unit has TAC card readers that can be assigned out to our members. and will allow a certain level of link up with the MILNet. And there are still some issues and challenges, and again, I've asked the J6 to continue to work towards enhanced ability for us to communicate, with our traditional or drilling status Guard members, and that's where a lot of the problem lies. So if you don't have a CAC card reader, you should be able to go to your supply room at the unit and check one out, and then hopefully that will allow you to better communicate through AKO on the Army side, and to be able to get in and fill out those OERs and those NCOERs. That's all part of the system. And just like Chief said this morning, we're doing literally a disservice to our members if we don't follow through with the completion of the OER or NCOR or the OPR and NCOPR or whatever it is. Same thing on the air side. But at least on the Army side with the CAC card readers, you're now going to be able to do that from home. And stay tuned. We'll try to get more information out to everyone on that soon. Just a couple notes on legislative initiatives. The first thing that is on the slide talks about the Fargo MSC, Military Service Center. I talked a minute ago about what we have here in Bismarck. We started that in January of 2009. Our appropriations bill has gone through the Senate, and the hearing in the House is on the 14th of this month, but on the Senate side, we had no problem getting additional funds to open a military service center in Fargo, and I hope that the House is as kind and allows us to do so as well. And my intent is that by the 1st of July, we will have a service center in Fargo, somewhat similar to what we have here in Bismarck, that will be located somewhere within the community, not on Hector Field, not out by the Armory, but somewhere in the community where people can come in and again get help in addressing an issue. I'd mentioned that we're not duplicating the force or the effort of the Veterans Administration, and we actually work closely with the VA. And if someone needs to see the VA, we'll explain to them where they need to go or who they need to see, and it complements the two agencies complement one another in taking care of our people. State active duty medical expense reimbursement. This was something that we realized in 2009 when we had 2,500 plus soldiers and airmen on state active duty. When you come on to state active duty, you're a temporary state employee. If you're injured in the line of duty, workers' comp, as it used to be called, I think it's now workforce safety, will cover you. But what we found in 2009 is when we had people out walking the dikes in the middle of the night, middle of a snowstorm, rainstorm, whatever, we had soldiers and airmen contracting colds, the flu, or having minor injuries off of official duty that couldn't be linked directly to a line of duty. And we realized that in taking care of our people, it was necessary for us to pay the out-of-pocket expenses for a soldier, for airmen. So what we've asked the legislature, and again, this flew through the Senate yesterday, it came out of the House committee, we will have the authority and the ability to reimburse out-of-pocket expenses. Now, if you have insurance, your insurance will pay first, but if you have an out-of-pocket expense that relates to a cold or a flu or whatever, the sort of thing that isn't covered by workers' comp, then we want to ensure that we can reimburse you for those expenses. It's very narrowly defined. It's not complete medical coverage, and we'll, assuming that the House does pass it into law, we will put together some rules and policies that allow us to use it this spring, because they do have an emergency clause on it. We actually did this in 2009, and when we look back, we thought, well, let's make sure we have the proper authority, and that's why we sought it from the legislature. The legislature thinks it's a great idea. Voluntary recall of former service or Guard members. What this is, the law today allows us to call back officers for special boards and for training. And in 2009, especially as we had a number of units and soldiers and airmen deployed or getting ready for deployment, we realize that there's another valuable pool out there, and that pool includes former Guard members, whether they're retirees or served 6, 8, 10 years, but they have certain skills and experiences that could help us in the flood fight. So what this particular bill will do is that it'll allow us on a voluntary basis to bring people not in the Guard, but once in the Guard, into a state active duty status. We did this again in 2009 on a limited basis. I think we had about 25, 30 that we may have brought back, and this will help us to expand our capability to respond to disaster in the state. And lastly, we have continued funding for veterans bonus, tuition waiver, re-enlistment bonuses, and so on. And with several $100,000, which does go a long way, it has in the past, and the legislature, certainly has seen fit to continue to provide that appropriation to us. And I know one of the questions that did come in with regard to tuition waiver, and I'll wait and talk to that in a minute. So here, these are just 4 of the items that you can find somewhere in our budget or somewhere in bills that we introduced. And I will say that we enjoy tremendous support from our legislature, and that's important. And that gets back to what I talked earlier about the trust, the credibility, and the respect we have from the public. The decision makers certainly demonstrate that same level of trust and credibility and support for what we do. We all know that in a matter of days, some of us will be engaged in flood duty. I will tell you from a hydrologic standpoint, the potential is out there for the flood of 2011 to be greater than 2009 in many areas, particularly in the Fargo area along the Red River. And as I mentioned, we've done a lot to prepare for it. But I do expect that probably in the next 3 weeks or so, third week of March, we'll be bringing people on state active duty in great numbers to make sure that we can respond to what the governor sees as our need for support to the communities, counties, and cities. 2009, we had some issues with our state active duty pay system. And maybe some of you can tell me the reason for this. Now, it's kind of interesting. In 2009, we had people that were overpaid and we had people that were underpaid. Which ones do you think we heard from? Well, anyway, this year we shouldn't have any people that are overpaid or underpaid, and the reason for it is that we quickly realized the challenge when you bring on a couple thousand temporary employees. And after the 2009 flood, we made the decision to put a pay system into place, something that was used in Florida and a couple other states, specifically for state active duty. And we purchased rights to the system. It's in place. And when you come in and you go through the SRP process, you'll be put into the system, and everything will be automatic. And we're going to be able to pay every 2 weeks, not the uncertainty of payment that we had a couple of years ago. And everything should go much, much smoother. And we shouldn't have situations of people being underpaid or overpaid. And the key to that is making sure that people come in through the SRP and go out through the SRP, because it'll be automatic from that point on. So I'm expecting great things from the pay system this year, and time will tell. One of the issues that I was just was brought to my attention this morning, and I don't know what the answer is. We do have some challenges and issues when we talk about our technicians and the status they're in, and when our technicians go on to state active duty status. It can take several weeks for things to come back into place properly once they come back as a technician. In one instance, it was about, I think, 8 weeks before everything finally caught up on the technician side. Just because you come off that technician status, it's almost like a termination, from what I understand, and then coming back on takes a while. And oh, by the way, you lose out on some of the benefits, the CSP, and so on. So, I'm asking my staff to begin to look at that and to make sure we, number one, fully understand the extent of the problem, and then secondly, find a solution and figure out how we can take care of our people and treat them properly. One of the things that the legislature did provide for us last session was some funding for developing what we call Jock East, and it won't quite be ready for this event, but at Hector Field, we've developed a complex, taking down one old building, rebuilding a building on its footprint, and adding on and extending and adding that on to another building. So we'll have the potential for a Joint Operations Center East at Fargo in the not too distant future. Talking briefly about deployments, last week or 2 weeks ago, we had pretty good news coverage about the fact that we're at the lowest level of deployments out of state since 9/11, and the reason that came up was as questions were being asked about our ability to provide for a flood fight this year, what's the status of our resources? And as we speak, we don't have any units deployed out of state. Now we have the 119th Wing, the Predator mission, which is a Title X warfight mission, ongoing in Fargo, at Hector Field. And in addition to it, we have about a dozen, and I know it's almost exactly 12, individuals deployed somewhere. We still, I think, have 5 or 6 in Kosovo. People that volunteered to extend. I think the last count I saw, 2 in Iraq, 1 in Afghanistan, 1 in Kuwait, 1 in Guam, 1 in South Korea, and maybe 1 or 2 others. But it was literally a dozen people or less, and no units deployed. Now we do have 3 units on alert on the Army side for this fall. Those being the 188th Engineer Company out of Wahpeton and Oaks, involves I think about 140 people, 140 soldiers. We have the 835th and the 897th out of Carrington. Mission will be asphalt pavement mission. That'll involve about 40 people. And then the first of the 112th Aviation Battalion, right out of here in Bismarck, and that I think last count's going to be about 50 of our Aviation Battalion headquarters. That'll be those 3 units are on alert, and if they're mobilized, and there's always an if, we expect that those mobilizations will occur in the early fall, mid-winter, early 2012 timeframe. And I know on the air side, there's been some talk of some of the sections on the air side being mobilized in the coming year or so. We on the Army side, we have the ARPA-Gen model. ARPA-Gen is the Army Force Generation model, which essentially, in a pure, true theoretical world, it's a 6-year cycle where a unit knows where they're at in the 6-year cycle. In year 6 is when they're in the ready mode, and they can be mobilized and deployed. So once you're in year 6, you could be called upon to deploy somewhere in the world, somewhere in the country for that matter. And there's a lot of debate and discussion about what future missions will be for the National Guard, because at some point, we see the war coming down already in terms of engagement involvement. Hopefully at some point that'll end, and then what happens after that. But under ARPA-Gen, the model would be a year in the ready cycle. You come out, you're in the reset mode for a year, then you're in a train-up mode for a few years, and then you're back in the ready year. And the whole purpose of ARPA-Gen is to provide for predictability for that, for the soldier, and for the family, and for the employer, and to address our ability as a military to ensure that we have adequate forces available in any given year to take on whatever mission or assignment may be given to us. And on the air side, just this week, I was at the Association of the Adjutant General Association of the U.S. We have 2 meetings a year. We had the winter meeting in Washington, and that's where the 54 Adjutants General come together, 50 states, the 3 territories, and the District of Columbia, and talk through some of these major policy issues with the Chief of Staff of the Army, Chief of Staff of the Air Force, General McKinley, General Wyatt, General Carpenter. But this week was the first time that I personally had heard where the Air Force and the Air Guard, and now the Adjutant General, was talking about a similar cycle for the Air Guard. And there's discussion and debate about what that cycle should be and how you marry it up with the active component. And that's critical. When we talk about ARPA-Gen, the 1 in 6 cycle that I described is for the reserve component. On the active component side, there's a similar 1 in 3 cycle, and those all have to work together to ensure we have adequate forces. And right now, there's discussion on the same sort of concept for the Air Force and the Air Guard, and those cycles again have to marry up. So I expect in the coming, literally in the coming weeks, probably a month or so, we will all hear more on what the current Air Force philosophy will be on providing for that deployment predictability for Air Guard members. And lastly on this particular slide, we talk about win the fight. This fall, the 3rd week of September, North Dakota is hosting Vigilant Guard 11, and it's a great exercise. It's sponsored by NORTHCOM and National Guard Bureau. We've got about 20 different agencies involved from within the state. In addition to the Guard, we've got county agencies, city agencies, state agencies. And we've got 8 other states involved, plus there's the active component is involved too. And that takes place, I think it's like the 21st through the 24th of September, in that time frame. And it will occur right here in Bismarck. A lot of planning has gone into it. Lieutenant Colonel Rick Smith, I thought I saw him there earlier. He's our lead person on it, doing a great job. Oh, there he is. Okay, somebody over there is impersonating you, Rick. So anyway, Rick's doing a great job pulling this all together, and it's going to be a great opportunity. We're going to try to involve a lot of our soldiers and airmen in the exercise as it unfolds, and we're also going to host a regional TAG conference during that same time frame. So I hope that, and when we talk about the region, it's Region 8 that's part of FEMA. Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Colorado, and Utah are the states of this particular region. We look to the future. Meeting tomorrow's challenges. One of the things, one of the buzz phrases that we've heard a lot of in the last couple of years is, we're in a time of persistent conflict, and that persistent conflict changes, but it really isn't seen as going away anytime soon. We know what's happening in Iraq. We know what's happening in Afghanistan. We see what's happening in the Horn of Africa, what's happening in potential in other northern African countries, Libya, Egypt, Tunisia, and so on. And there's always this rogue element that's out there, the terrorist element, that we need to protect our citizens against and eliminate to the fullest extent. So because of that, we're in a time of persistent conflict, and that may last for decades, quite frankly. And the big question is, okay, how does the reserve component, the National Guard, fit into this? For years, for decades, we were a strategic reserve, and really what that meant is we were out there, and we were in the hinterlands, and if some of you have been around for a while, if the Red Horde came through the Fulda Gap, you'd likely be called up and be a part of the nation's defense. Well, that's all changed, and and now, instead of being a strategic reserve, we are literally an operational force. And there's a lot of discussion on the true definition of an operational force. But I'll guarantee you that the National Guard, the reserve component, has built a tremendous level of credibility with the active component. And that's a lot different than it was years ago. But as a result of that, and a result of our demonstration of our capability, and our success at our federal mission, we now are being considered an operational force. There's some debate as an operational force or operational reserve, but I honestly see the pendulum swinging towards us actually being considered an operational force, and that's where ARPA-Gen and whatever comes out on the air side becomes important, because we'll cycle in and carry out the missions for the nation's defense.